our final guest this evening is best known as the author of the international bestseller Politically Correct Bedtime Stories, which sold more than 2 million copies in the US and was translated into 25 languages. He's been published in Chicago Magazine, Playboy, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and TV Guide, and has been heard on NPR and the BBC. A veteran performer, he has recently read at Paper Machete, Right Club, That's All She Wrote, Essay Fiesta, and Reading Under the Influence. His current project is the seminal clown noir mystery trilogy, starring Rex Koko, Private Clown, Honk Honk My Darling, Double Indignity, and The Wet Nose of Danger. Games, bullets, banana peels. Please welcome James Finn Garner.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. This story does come from the yet-to-be-published Wet Nose of Danger, which should be out later in the summer. The Clown Noir series takes place in a circus ghetto. It's a combination of Chinatown with The Greatest Show on Earth, in which you go down there for a cheap, good time, and you take in a fire eater and an acrobatics, and then you go to the strip club that's run by the fat lady from the freak show. It is plays off the dichotomy between regular society and circus society, and it does star Rex Koko, Private Clown, a pariah clown. In the and like I said, this year I'll have this summer I'll have 2 more books come out in the series. So if you're interested, talk to me later. This comes from the 3rd book in the series, Wet Nose of Danger, in which first off, little show dogs are being kidnapped from rich ladies' houses, like King Charles Spaniels, etc. They're being snatched in broad daylight, and it's causing a lot of havoc. Rex has been hired by a Senator Chalmers Lodestone, to look into this. And recently, a woman who is the dog trainer to the stars, Florenza Musel, has been attacked, and the dog has been snatched in front of her in broad daylight. Rex Koko has been hired as a security guard at a fundraiser that the senator is throwing for the art museum. And the only clue I can tell you is that the only clue he has for finding the stolen dogs is that liver is always involved. So that plays into this just a bit. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a small moon-shaped object floating by. It moved so quick, and I saw it so briefly, that I almost wrote it off as a hallucination. Of course, at my time of life, I'm not above chasing after hallucinations. Some people might call it inspiration. Some might call it distractibility. I call it instinct, because it sounds more mysterious. I tried to weave my way through the thick of the crowd, but no one was paying attention to me. Always prepared, I reached under my coat and gave my whoopee cushion a squeeze. Conversation stopped, and without looking around, everyone politely eased their way out of the immediate area. Then I saw the little moon again. It turned out to be the back of Shotzi's bald, luminous head. He's the assistant to the dog trainer. Shotzi's bald, luminous head. Having traded his work uniform for a white tuxedo jacket tonight, he looked like an iceberg in black slacks. I walked up from behind, breathed on his skull, and shined it with my sleeve. He turned around, startled. Herr Clown, I prefer a more standard greeting. I wanted to be sure I had your attention, Shotzi. I didn't want to accidentally step between you and a waiter's tray. Is there something I can do for you, or are you just going to keep annoying me? You say that like one needs to cancel out the other. I'm more ambitious than that. Did the Countess come tonight? Of course not. After the attack this morning, she was in no condition. I don't suppose it is possible that the detective working on the case has learned anything about who was responsible. No, but I will soon enough. Any guesses why she was attacked in broad daylight? For intimidation, certainly. To prove he can strike whenever he wants. This morning at the armory, I said something to you, and you almost turned yourself inside out laughing. Something about the dog napper wearing a mask. Why was that so funny? Because if you can't find a criminal dressed as outrageously as that, perhaps you should return to the circus. You know, I might have this all wrapped up by now if I'd gotten some straight answers out of you. Maybe if your boss had leveled with me, she wouldn't be home nursing a shiner and an abused reputation. For all my hot air shots, he wasn't looking at me. He was calculating something else in his head. I was just noise in the background now. He was focused on a waiter cruising by with a tray. Garçon, comme si here, bitte. The waiter looked down his nose a bit, but said nothing. Schatzi repeated his order, which sparked a minor growling match in French and German. The scene had already occurred a few times that evening, I guessed, given the waiter's reluctance to serve anything to this German. After the tussle was over, the tension was real. Although the tussle was minor, the tension was real, and only ended when Schatzi got a fistful of toast pieces, each smeared with liverwurst. That's a lot of effort for a snack. You a big fan of liverwurst, Schatzi? I'm finished talking with you. Please leave me alone. All right, but let me give you one little word of advice. He tried to make his bulk rise up threateningly, but the little balloon couldn't float very high. What is that, Herr Clown? Don't tuck the sandwiches in the folds of your cummerbund like that. Makes you look like a glutton. I walked away, then circled back through the crowd to keep a closer eye on the German. Maybe it meant nothing that Schatzi was big on liver. Not much grub escaped his grasp. But this little slip was worth noting. He was the first person I'd met since I'd started this case that could stand the odor of that stuff. The gentle music of the string quartet wafted over the murmur of the mingling crowd, laying light, ribbon-like beauty over the mundane noise. Even at a distance, I kept an ear cocked to hear as much as possible. It was so gorgeous, it almost made me forget this was a world in which little bow-wows could be snatched away in broad daylight, right under the noses of their expensive handlers hired by their doting owners. It was also a world in which a genius like Mozart, a holy fool if there ever was one, could be chewed up and spit out in the streets of Vienna, dying penniless and alone after gracing us with his beautiful music. How those two ideas connect, I got no idea. Just because I got no idea doesn't mean I'm wrong. With one eye on Schatzi, I sauntered nearer the bandstand to soak in the melodies more fully. As I tiptoed along the hydrangea bush, I was suddenly grabbed from behind by a pair of bony hands and pulled out of sight. My coat was pulled up over my head, making it tough to swing my arms around and grab my attacker. I was hauled maybe 10 feet through the scratchy shrubbery before I was let go. My attacker spun me around and grabbed me in a bear hug. More like a bear hug in mating season, because hands were flying all over me in some of my most unpublic places. Someone was mighty hungry for some clown loving. But I was still on the job. So after a minute or two of half-hearted struggle, I pushed myself away to see who was so hot for me. There, with hydrangea leaves poking out of her graying brown hair, stood the lanky figure of the senator's wife, Isabel Lodestone. It looked like her anyway, but it sure didn't act like her. Mrs. Lodestone, I stammered, trying to adjust my ancient suit. What kind of clown do you take me for? She replied with a low, rumbling laugh that sounded like distant thunder. Don't kid me, Mr. Koko. I could tell what was on your mind the very first time we met at Mrs. Van Lyon's. Sorry, wrong number. I never mix business with pleasure. And what does the business of a clown but pleasure? She tossed her bony frame at me and landed a kiss as hot and writhing as a feverish anaconda. This was an occupational hazard for somebody in my line. I mean, some broads simply can't control themselves around a clown. Maybe it's the old wives' tale about the big shoes. Now, some Joeys take advantage of this and wiggle their balloons most anywhere, but I have a little more self-respect than that. Listen, lady, I said, pushing her off, this ain't the time or place. You're a respectable woman, and this is a respectable crowd. Don't give me that. Just because I'm married to a senator, have advanced degrees from Princeton and Vassar, and can trace my ancestry back to Charlemagne, doesn't mean I'm respectable. Look at me as just a woman, with a woman's needs and a woman's appetite. She was pretty tanked up. And judging from the drugstore smell in her breath, that probably wasn't port in her glass before either. She was firing it off hotter than a 10-girl coochie show, but no way could I give in. She was too unstable, and the senator was too powerful. Besides which, she had all the curves of a hat rack, not my kind of Jill at all. She reached for my belt and gave it a tug, grabbing the bulb of my Bombay horn by mistake. The fat honk could be heard for a mile. You'd think the noise would have caused her to stop, but she only got wilder and let out a lusty bark. She was so worked up, I doubt I really needed to be there. I could have just left her with some of my props and let her go to town. Don't think I wasn't tempted, but the racket would have been something terrible. You're my big clown, aren't you? You're my big clown. No, right now I'm a big Seamus. Your husband hired me for security tonight. That's what I'm gonna do. He has his fun. Why shouldn't I? Don't you know women like a man with a sense of humor? She started rooting around on me like a pig in a truffle hunt. Somehow she got her hands on my wolf whistle and gave that a shrill toot. Which sent her into even more of a fit. I was sure we'd be discovered, which meant at the very least I could haul my keister back to Top Town and continue to slowly starve to death. Mrs. Lodestone, you're letting the cough syrup do your thinking for you. You don't want to get shipped upstate again, do you? But she was past reasoning. I even squirted her a couple of times with my boutonniere, but it was like dousing a fire with gasoline. She had more arms than a Spider Woman, and the sex drive of a hippo after happy hour. When she finally grabbed my nose and set off the whistle there, it was all over but the mopping. She moaned hard enough to rattle the glasses at the waiter station and slowly lowered herself to the ground, gasping sighs of release. I turned the water flower on myself for a squirt or two, just to cool off. With timing that was almost too perfect, the bushes behind us rustled, and through them stepped Senator Lodestone himself, beaming broadly. Ah, Koko, I've found you. Isabel, what are you doing here? Nothing, Claude. Just passing the time with this fascinating entertainer. I thought I heard sounds back here. Sounded like animals escaped from a menagerie. Well, you could say that, I said, shaking myself into composure. Something's definitely wild around here. I'll say, said Mrs. Lodestone. Either she was shameless, or he was a sap. Or both. Or neither. I didn't know. I was having a hard enough time getting my rubber chicken back in my pocket. We were just chatting about the dog nappings, I said, trying to think up a plausible reason to be found behind a thick hedge with a narcotized nymphomaniac with a split personality. Oh, forget about that now, said the senator, taking my arm. Come back to the party. I need you out there beside me. Isabel, are you coming? No, Claude, I think I'll stay back here and smoke a pack of cigarettes. She gave me a wicked, weary smile that said she wasn't through with me. Things were definitely getting funny around here, only I wasn't so sure I liked it. Thank you.